I'm so sorry for this. Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Seasons 1 and 2. Summary review. 6 out of 10 if you don't care about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. 7 out of 10 if you do. This show is a fun action-adventure series, but at the end of the day, it doesn't have enough going on in terms of character arcs or main story arcs to really feel like a whole series. In Season 1, the premise of the show was fairly simple. Agent Coulson has put together a task force of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to take on special missions. These agents include Senior Agent Belinda May, Straight-Laced Agent Grant Ward, Science Officers Fitz and Simmons, and the new recruit, Skye, who's their resident hacker. None of these characters are really given character arcs in the first season, which is very confusing, especially because this is a Joss Whedon show, who is known for their great character arcs. If you look at series like Dollhouse and Buffy and Firefly, these shows are held together by their crew of characters who have individual motivations and great relationships between the characters, which we want to see develop. This doesn't exist in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for some reason. All the characters are already at the peak of their field. They're senior, well, not senior, but they're very high-ranking S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who are very good in their field, good enough to be selected for a special task force. As a result, there's no real room for the characters to grow outside of interpersonal relationships. But because these 6 characters are isolated in this group of 6 people on this task force, their room for interpersonal relationships isn't very big, and we see very basic and not particularly interesting character interactions. The one big character relationship that we're introduced to in the first season is the incredibly stereotypical attractive female lead and attractive male lead romance between Agent Ward and Agent Skye. But at the end of the day, this feels not particularly strong in the sense that it's just the most attractive female lead and the most attractive male lead getting together in a relationship, with the added dimensionality of, but she's a wild child and he's a straight-laced agent. Yeah, that's the complexity of their dynamic. Over the course of the first season, the character arcs are as follows. Skye is introduced to S.H.I.E.L.D. and her backstory is mentioned. Ward's backstory is discussed and comes up. Fitz tells a girl he likes her. Simmons does nothing. Belinda May has a dark, mysterious past which goes undiscussed or revealed. And Coulson finds out why he isn't dead. Those are literally the entire character arcs of the first season. In addition to not really having character arcs, the first half of the first season doesn't really have a story arc either. At the time, this left many people perplexed as to what was even going on in the series. This was resolved when Captain America 2 came out, midway through the season. When Captain America 2 came out, we find out that, spoiler for anyone not in the know about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that Hydra has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. This has resulted in S.H.I.E.L.D. fracturing, which is largely our problem in the second half of Season 1. The second half of Season 1 follows to have a reasonable story arc that is mildly entertaining, but there just isn't much going on, and the small amount of plot in the second half of the season doesn't make up for the complete lack of one in the first half. At the end of the day, the series just felt lacking. So in comes the second season, and this season seems to try and fix a bunch of problems that we had in the first season. We introduced new characters, but those characters are proceeded to not be given any interesting character interactions or character arcs at all, with the exception of Fitz and Mac's relationship, which was fairly nice. We are also given a stronger storyline than the first season, involving Kree artifacts. This storyline can be summarized as follows. Hey, there's this Kree thing that we should find. Oh, that Kree thing is a map. Oh, that thing is a map to a city. Oh, let's go to that city. And then the mid-season finale happens and things actually happen. The only interesting thing that comes of this half season is, big spoiler alert, Agent Tripp dies. But here's the problem with that. Trip is introduced in the last couple episodes of the first season as kind of a replacement for Ward. He's then not given any storylines whatsoever in season 2, and then threatened to be killed off, and then killed off. You can't make the audience care about a character that you don't give any character development or storylines to. So we come to the second half of season 2, where we begin to get an actual solid story arc. However, that story arc is very flimsy and makes very little sense. I can't discuss the second half of season 2, because since things actually happen, there are actual spoilers. So if you care about being surprised, you should leave now. So, Sky's an Inhuman. For those of you who don't know about the Marvel Universe, I'm not the best person to describe it, but I'll try and summarize it here. The Inhumans are a group of people that resulted from an alien race, the Kree, experimenting on humans or proto-humans, Neanderthals or something. So anyway, this race of Inhumans exists today as a subset of humans who are both at the physical and mental peak of humanity in the comics. In this show, they're mostly just kind of average. But anyway, once the Inhumans are exposed to this thing called the Terrigen Mists, they can develop powers a la mutants from X-Men, where each individual gets unique powers that are very different and might change them physiologically and might not. Yeah. So, at the end of the first half of season 2, Skye is exposed to these mists. These mists begin to give her powers, and she begins to realize that she's an Inhuman. The Inhumans come to her and contact her, and then bring them and tell her about their civilization. On the S.H.I.E.L.D. side of things, Coulson is taken over as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. after Nick Fury's disappearance after the events of Captain America 2 in Season 1. A small branch of S.H.I.E.L.D., actually a relatively large branch, has concluded that Coulson isn't the best leader and that Nick Fury kept too many secrets, and as a result, they're going to start a new S.H.I.E.L.D. that's democratic and has blackjack and hookers. Because they conclude that they're in the philosophical right, they call their organization S.H.I.E.L.D. because it's what S.H.I.E.L.D. should have been. Note that this makes absolutely no sense, because S.H.I.E.L.D. clearly would have had a line of protocols for disposing of an inadequate director, which would be Coulson in this case. And since they're not following those S.H.I.E.L.D. protocols, they're clearly not S.H.I.E.L.D., but ignore that. Because halfway through the second half of the season, they decide that the conflict doesn't matter anymore, S.H.I.E.L.D. 1 and S.H.I.E.L.D. 2 merge in order to deal with the Inhumans. Note, on this level, we have the Inhumans, a group of people who have peacefully lived alongside humanity for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and you have S.H.I.E.L.D., an organization which is 70 years old, has fractured multiple times, has proven itself untrustworthy by being infiltrated by Hydra, and has caused international incidents. The tail half of Season 2 is dedicated to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s 1 and 2 joining together in order to deal with the Inhumans. They do this by tracking the teleporter, who's the Inhumans' main means of transportation, and by main I mean only. They then decide to liaise with the leader of the Inhumans and ask that the Inhumans register every single member of their species with S.H.I.E.L.D. because they're a threat. Is this vaguely reminding you of anything? Can you not quite put your finger on it? It's the Nazis. S.H.I.E.L.D. is kind of acting like the Nazis. To the Inhumans, Jews. It's kind of really dumb. So, instead of reacting to the reasonably, no, our peaceful millennia-old organization won't register with your 70-year-old full of conflict organization for no reason, the leader of the Inhumans kind of goes crazy. Alright, so let's remember one thing here. I don't want to seem like I'm undervaluing the Holocaust or underwriting its importance or its horror, but this is kind of like going up to a concentration camp survivor and telling her that we're going to register all Jews and that nothing bad is going to happen as a result of it. We just want to register all Jews in case something happens. You can't accuse that person of overreacting. So we head up to this end of Season 2 with the leader of the Inhumans' overreaction to S.H.I.E.L.D. trying to register every member of a peaceful species. Note this isn't an organization, it's a species. So the leader of the Inhumans tries to wipe out the S.H.I.E.L.D. with a small batch of Inhumans, and S.H.I.E.L.D. retaliates and ends up winning. And that's the season. At the end of the day, the series has the weaknesses I mentioned. You have an ensemble cast who don't really have character arcs. You have no real main story arcs that make sense. And overall, you're just left with a bunch of filler action, which leaves for an okay television show, but it's by no means a good television show. If you're looking for something in the Marvel vein that's a little bit better, Agent Carter is much better. Instead of having an ensemble cast that they proceeded to do nothing with, they actually focused on a small handful of characters and actually competently developed them. Also, sidebar, I'd like to point out, even though this doesn't have the Joss Whedon hallmarks of a really well-developed cast and characters and decent plot, he does leave his marks on it in different ways. For those of you who don't know, Joss Whedon has kind of this polarizing view as a feminist, where he tends to write powerful women, but those women tend to be punished for being powerful. Think how River Tam got her powers by forced experimentation. But anyway, in the season finale, just take a note of exactly how many women die and how many men die. Also, how many women are tortured. Just putting it out there. Joss Whedon, he still leaves his marks in some ways. At the end of the day, the main flaw in this series is that it can't really do anything. It's constrained in a universe where we can assume that people have seen multiple movies whenever they see a Marvel movie, but they can't assume that the average audience goer will have had time to watch multiple seasons of a television show. As a result, Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is stuck in this position where it's in this universe that it can't really change. And as a result, you're left with underwhelming story arcs and characters who can't really do anything. But if you're looking for a kind of fun action show, then feel free to give it a try. If there's anything you'd like to discuss or think that I missed or have any comments to make, please leave them below. Also, if you have any recommendations for other series that you'd like me to review, let me know. Until next time.